Overdrive Fitness. My name is Teddy Gerzon, and I'm joined by Gina Marie Gerzon.
What's up, everybody?
What is up? So I'm doing my best to not recite the main theme from Sweeney Todd because we saw that this past weekend, and now I can't stop singing it. The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. So
They were very
yes.
mobile in their
There's
spine.
There's a
a lot of flexion and extension going on.
A lot of body rolls.
Yep.
It was dope.
Back in the day. I mean, that's where it happened, I think.
Pretty awesome. But yeah, great show. Josh Groban was the lead. I would say the female lead, she stole the show. Anna Lee Rashford, something like that. She was great.
Oh my
And then
God,
Dustin
hysterical.
from Stranger Things was also in there. So great show for sure. Anyway, moving on, since we're not going to spend this whole episode talking about slitting people's throats when they're going in for a haircut and shave, but we are going to talk about resting, which you are supposed to be doing in a barber's chair. So I know my do is covered up right now by my hat, but shout out to Nick at Dapper Ways for always hooking up the hairdos at Overdrive. Excuse me. So, yeah, today we want to talk about your resting heart rate. And Gina has plenty to talk about regarding that.
Well, I mean, we're both going to say so.
Yeah,
but I just think it's
I know.
important. It's another topic that can be kind of quick and to the point. So your resting heart rate is the average beats per minute that your heart will pump at a pretty consistent time. So whether you're sitting, you're lying down, just being relaxed, or even asleep, actually. A great way to track that, I know a lot of us have wearables, so whether it's the Apple Watch, the Oura Ring, the Whoop Band, there are some inconsistencies with things, I think, calorically and stuff, but regardless, the resting heart rate is pretty accurate on the majority of these devices. Resting heart rate should be pretty consistent. If we don't have a wearable, we could absolutely track our resting heart rate literally first thing in the morning by taking those two fingers to your carotid, and we can go over that another day, but we can absolutely do that if you don't have a wearable. Resting heart rate, depending upon how high or low it is, it definitely can signify aerobic fitness or the lack thereof, so your cardiovascular conditioning. That can definitely change with age as well. The average heart rate, it's usually found between that 60 and 100 beats per minute, and again, the consistency is what we're looking for. That's what always wins, and it's nice to be able to track that because it shows so many things. It can give you so much information. When we start to see some serious highs and lows in that, that's where I think we need to kind of put our antenna up and figure out what's going on. Regardless of if you're an elite athlete or not, it does give a lot of information. What else did I want to say? And normally, too, with these wearables, once you get one, don't expect in the first day or two, oh my God, give it several weeks to a month or even 2 months to just bring in the data and see what you're working with. There's definitely things that we can control to a point to help moderate the resting heart rate. And then I think sometimes there's just things that you can't really control so much. We should all be getting some form of cardiovascular exercise as well. So whether it's walking, running, jogging, on the elliptical, on the bike, taking a hike. It's so beautiful out now. We should all be getting outside. things that, challenge your aerobic fitness, your heart and your lungs, and how quickly and efficiently your heart can pull the blood in and excrete the blood back out into the rest of your body. So I think when we talk about, how it can be affected and certain things that we can control to moderate and minimize any changes, try to keep it consistent, is a consistent bedtime is huge. They're noticing that even a 30-minute shift in where you would normally go to bed and falling behind there can absolutely affect your resting heart rate. Smoking is one for sure that can definitely affect that heart rate because it is a stimulant, so nicotine. Alcohol is another beverage, or not just a beverage, but it can increase your heart rate. It says on the average about 5 beats per minute. So those are both, either it can bring you up or down. So we can definitely minimize that we have control over those things. Your hydration, oh my God, huge. They find even with dehydration too, heart attacks, things that can happen in the middle of the night. That lack of hydration throughout the day and even, several hours into bedtime. That's why hydration is so huge. Your blood is mostly water. A large part of it is water. And our bodies are made up, right, 70% of water. We have to remember too, so when we're not hydrated, and that's why as athletes, when we train, whether it's for sport or for life, that hydration factor is huge, because the less hydrated you are, the thicker the blood becomes, the harder it is for the blood to travel. And blood contains nutrients of all kinds, and that's what allows us to thrive. Vitamins and minerals, protein, carbs, fats, things like that, things that we need to survive. Hormones, all of those things. Electrolytes, minerals, things like that. So you need to hydrate, guys. Get up on that. Your physical fitness and activity, so obviously the more cardiovascularly sound you are is going to be a huge factor in your resting heart rate. Getting that minimum dose, working yourself up to 20 to 30 minutes, even several days a week is a big deal. Something that you can handle, maybe a breathy conversation. That's a nice amount of intensity, even just to work towards something like that, your aerobic fitness. And again, we have control over this, yes? So we can add on or take away. And how intensely is our activity? So whether we're training for a marathon or we're in the gym 5 or 6 or 7 days a week and we're busting our butts and, we're coming home sore AF. Again, we have control over how intensely we work. And that can absolutely affect our resting heart rate, is how we're recovering. So as you increase your training volume, obviously, and the intensity goes up, your resting heart rate will most definitely rise along with that. Those are things that we can control. So we have to start thinking about, okay, so what kind of things maybe that we don't have as much control over, what could affect the resting heart rate? So, okay, if we end up getting sick, illness, if both kids are sick and who's throwing up and then husband or wife or whatever, maybe your coworkers. Okay, so we do our best to, mediate and keep ourselves as healthy as possible. But illness can absolutely be a huge factor in your resting heart rate increasing. And if we notice even days prior, if you end up getting sick, how many days post that rise you'll notice. So normally it's an indicator. It does give you information. This data, the resting heart rate, definitely does give you information even days prior. Gender definitely is a factor. I mean, I don't want to say it's under the. Maybe we could be really silly about it, but okay, male or female. Females tend to have a higher resting heart rate than males. I'm just gonna that's it, and then we're not even gonna go over it anymore. Your hormones. So in our most previous podcast, we were talking about female physiology. Ladies, the latter end of your cycle prior to menstruation is you're going to have a higher resting heart rate. There's an inflammatory response happening as your body prepares for either becoming pregnant or pretty much letting things go and detoxing you and running the full cycle again. So there is an inflammatory process happening. So that latter half of your cycle, your resting heart rate most likely will go up. I mean, it is what it is. And obviously, stress, emotions, bad dream, what happened throughout the day, you kind of bring it into the bedtime hours, all of those things. Sometimes we can control those things and sometimes we can't. So do we need to meditate? Do we need to take a warm bath? Do we need to journal? Do we need to read? Do we need to take a light walk before we go to sleep? Some stretching? I don't know. The stress factor, again, can we moderate that or not? I'm not really sure. Sometimes it's kind of out of our control. Traumas and things like that. But emotions and stress can absolutely affect your resting heart rate. So I think that we pretty much went over the things that we can control and the things that maybe sometimes we cannot or just absolutely cannot control. So those can all affect your resting heart rate. And, by wearing that, getting the wearables or checking first thing in the morning is the best way to bring in that data. So.
Mm-hmm. I've always found it. I remember watching The Ultimate Fighter for the first time, the reality show, mm-hmm. and Rich Franklin was training, and mm-hmm. his trainer, I remember that he would track his resting heart rate like between rounds, and he in less than a minute he can get I think it was like 30 seconds. He can get his heart rate down to his resting heart rate. Right? He can get it down to like 50 beats per minute, mm-hmm. which is insane. Like, I don't even know what mine is right now. And
I mean, some elite athletes and some, the younger population, 30s and 40s, elite athletes, and how quickly as quickly as they can get it up there and then bring it right back down, and that's also a process and it's practice, but, we just want to see that consistency between that 60 and 100. First thing in the morning on the lower end, obviously, but we want to see that consistency.
Mine was 59 this morning, it said. So, I'm cool with that, I guess.
That's great.
But, yeah, I mean, like, the only thing I could really add to any of this, though, is, I would say getting on top of your breathing, right? Mm-hmm. So, first thing, I mean, yeah, we always preach diaphragmatically breathing, right? So, taking air as far into your body as you can, right? Some people call it belly breathing. Some of the breathing experts like to butt heads, but at that point we're pretty much just splitting hairs, mm-hmm. right? But at the point being, you want to breathe into your diaphragm and circumferentially, which we've definitely mentioned on this show before. But even before that, I think the first thing most people need to tackle is just nasal breathing, right? So actually inhaling through your nose. And then, I mean, you technically could exhale through your nose too, but you'd be amazed how you can how greatly you can positively affect your resting heart rate, and which will then lead to de-stressing, right? And tackling on more stress, and taking on more stress and getting rid of it, right? Your ability to tolerate all that and just your overall health simply from nasal breathing. Right.
And if you think about it, when we are sleeping, we're diaphragmatically breathing
Yeah.
for the most part. I mean, I think some more than others, but ideally, again, that's where we're in our most restful state. You know, consciously kind of drifting off into dreamland.
Yeah.
Your body's doing what it needs to do, but, you know, you'll notice, I love watching the dogs too, because they always diaphragmatically breathe. Animals are so in touch with their bodies, and you know, if people just start to notice their shirts and pants and things moving, trying to actually breathe into the clothes that they have in all different directions, instead of just trying to breathe so much into their chest, and actually moving their shoulders and, you know, their upper ribs and shrugging and stuff, and actually just trying to be as relaxed as possible and expanding the lower part of your abdomen, and, you know, your lower back and your hips and everything else, breathing down into your pelvis and stuff. And it's important that we always remind everybody, you know, when we're training too. But that's a good point, Boo.
So yeah, there you have it. Resting heart rate, what it is, how it can be affected, both in a positive and negative way, and hopefully we've given you some pointers on how to identify whether or not your resting heart rate is good or bad or needs improvement, and what to do in order to improve that number, right? I mean, it's only going to help. You improve that number, it's only going to help you recover better, which will allow you to push harder in your workouts, which will also allow for much better gains. I'm sure you guys have been picking up the background noise of the mechanic going ham next door.
And the dogs are not bothered one bit.
This is a normal day for them. So, anything else to add?
No.
All right, so with that being said, we are out. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Overdrive AF. We are out.
Peace.